Oh. There we go. Oh, no. Sorry about that. Slow start. Got cables everywhere. So I was doing this. Just nicked myself. And I was like, wait a minute. Saturday. Kids will be running in and out. Completely messing everything up. And you're experimenting. So why don't we do this with the folks, eh? So I've got these magnets here. See those very well. They're a little bit wider, slightly this way and that way than the little thinner ones that I got. See how that looks side by side. But what I've done so far, this is my Rhino / Razorback Deathwatch transport, which is a Rhino Razorback. I always buy Razorbacks because you can run them as Rhinos or Razorbacks. And I've always done the las cannon option on mine. But through battles and other stuff, I've seen that other people run different weapon systems on them. They run the heavy bolters or assault cannons. And so me personally, I figured, hey, why don't we do those options, right? Do them up. So what it is, started with this sprue, the turret weapon sprue here. And on it comes a little turret, and then this little piece. It has a little plastic piece. Little nubs that fits in the holes here. So what I did is took my bigger drill bit, drilled those out so that these magnets would fit in there. I cut the knobs off here, drilled through that, and hopefully, I'm not sure how close this will be. Hopefully when I put a magnet in here, this will be able to work together. Like magnetizes right there. It's a plan. And once it's locked in, I'll be able to like put it in here and drop that down like that. And then pull it out and do the other weapon. That's my goal. Can I do it? Not 100% sure if that's going to work or not. I really am not. I'm going to shave these down a little bit because it looks like it's going to be tight. I need to get the magnets down as far as I can in there. I might have to do more drilling there. And someone come knocking at the door. Salesman selling some crap earlier that I didn't want. Forgive my language, I'm sorry. Ended up knife slipping and nicking my finger, but it was my fault for having my finger in a position where it could be nicked. So it's already sealed up now as it is. A little spare super glue. I'm gonna do these as deep as I can without going through the other side. Don't want the magnets to be too deep, but even if they're just not quite level with the surface, because these are sticking out a little bit on each side here. Because there's two magnets in here that I shoved all the way through. I could have centered one, and maybe that would have worked a little better. But now, if worse comes to worse, what I can do is I can take my Dremel and I can Dremel down the magnets there. No problemo. And that will be fine. But I figured, hey, I'm doing this. It's just experiment. See if this will work or what I might have to modify. Something to think I might have to modify is the length of these. I don't want to modify them too much because when they're... Let me hold this. You guys probably should be getting this ready. I mean, when the gun's up, it's like, I think like there. It's still like, there's a little bit I guess I could cut off maybe. But not much, not much. For it not to look cut off and ugly as it pops out of the thing, right? Got a little bit much going on here. Let me straighten up my mess. And then I can move on effectively. DJ's girlfriend's coming, so he's cleaning up a little bit. Right, we must be make sure we get polarity. That's opposite. There we go. Okay, let's just get one off there. Alright, so this one. Yes. Glue. Oh, there it is way over there. Whew, having a good day today for sure. Went to the store yesterday. Talk more about that on my weekend update Monday. And push. Oh, nope. So it's not going to be a super tight fit, so I can get this well below. There, that's actually a little bit below the surface. That's still going to... Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. It's going to grab to one side or the other for sure, it looks like. Alright, so need a magnet for this side. There we go. Yeah. Sure. Good. Uh-oh, what you doing, Char Char? You hiding from the brothers? Not sure. Here and gone again. I have to stretch and push the door slightly shut. Gotta leave it slightly open because otherwise havoc will ensue out there. Mommy's taking a nap, so... Dang it. Ah, no! Well, that was a miss. That was a failure on my part. Let's try that one more time. Get that in there. There we go. Use a wooden stick or device and press that down below the surface. There we go. That's better. It's going to be... It'll work. Let's see how that works. Seems to work fairly... Oh, it's holding tight. Wow. It's grippier than I thought it might be. So I guess while that dries, I need to glue this. So yeah, I'm hoping that this works. If it does, then it'll make me sad that I haven't tried it before. But really, magnetization of everything's been kind of a recent advent for me. At first I wasn't quite sure about it, and then I wasn't sure exactly what would be easy to do. And of course everybody tells you, a lot of people tell you, not everybody, but a lot of people tell you, you just can't magnetize this, that, or the other. And that was my impetus to do it. My raison d'etre. I do not like being told what cannot be done. Never have, never will. No, this is for my, Bram, this is for my Deathwatch transport. I'm only going to build a little bit of it here with you guys today, and then later on, I will, here's what I'm thinking. I want to do the LED kit, some of it with that, I think. But I'm not sure if I want to do it with that, or if I want to go back to the, what is it, the Sky Shield landing pad and do some LEDing with that. So that's my dilemma at the point right now, is which one I will do that with. I got two Land Raiders. One, I got a Last Cannon version, and then I got the Hurricane Bolter one. I'm thinking about getting another one and building it as the Flamer version, because I love Flamers. There's glue on the bottom. How'd that get scooted through there? But yeah, I like Land Raiders, but they are not so cool on the tabletop these days. Okay, so if I try to get this in here, this is going to be a tight fit, okay? And then it will go, oh, actually we'll go down. So that works. And then it will come off and pop off, okay? A little tight fit, but cool. So there we go. And then I'll be able to do that with the heavy bolters. Is that what that is? I think that's heavy bolters. I'm building my Deathwatch transport there, Mr. Rentinen. What, other people don't stream building stuff? I guess they're afraid that they'll mess something up. I don't know. Maybe they are. Or maybe they think it's too boring. I don't know. It could be too boring for some people. I am unconcerned with messing stuff up because I know that I will. I will glue myself together. But this is a good glue because I got glue on where I nicked myself there. So that is great. That'll help seal that. And I will not bleed all over my cool models. Alright, let's see how this one works. See, we can make sure we can get this one off. Okay, that came off. That's cool. Now we got to do the magnets on this one. It's hard to hold that like that. And then this one, that should work too. The magnets will be there. Might have to trim a little bit on these things here though, depending on how that goes. We'll see. Cult Mechanicus Skitarii Deathwatch Army. Well, great. I have a lot of Deathwatch videos. You should watch those. And starting, not this week, but next week, I'm going to start talking about the Cult Mechanicus and the AdMech forces. I have a War Convocation that I've run a few times. And I've gotten really used to what it can and can't do and how to run it. So we're going to be talking about all those models and all those units and everything, and some of their goods and bads. The greatest thing, the craziest thing about Cult Mechanicus AdMech Skitarii is that pretty much every unit has its own special rules, and it's quite difficult to keep that all track unless you're like some kind of super keep track of things person. I'll give you a hint right now. Let me see. They should be right here. Oh, come out. This is what I've done for mine when I play them. Made note cards of all the units that's in what I play, their stats, their weapons. On the back is, you know, some of their rules, some of their special weapons that they carry. Note cards. That's how I keep track of my forces with Cult Mechanicus for sure. Is have it all note carded up, and that way when something crazy goes on, or there's a rule that I need to make sure I apply, then it gets applied. Because basically what I'll do is I'll go to each unit in order to activate. In my mind, I'm activate it, so get the card out, read the card over, verify in my head what my thoughts were for the plan of what I was going to do with that unit this turn, look at the card, and make sure that I'm getting their stuff. Because I see so many people, you see so many people miss rules like the 6-up save that the Ruststalkers and the Sicarian guys have. They have a Sicarian plate armor, and that gives them a 6-up invul save. And I've seen battle reports so many times where people get shot and they're like, oh, they just pick them up and walk off, and they're like, wait, you have a 6-up save versus an invul save. Yeah, it might not save them, but you never know. Sometimes just getting one of those Sicarian guys into combat, they can do some serious damage with their little cord claws and transuranic razors and all that stuff. I have to widen these. That's what I'm doing here. If you guys are wondering why I'm being so boring and annoying, out of the way, monkey people. All the monkey people are doing Inquisition videos, so that's why they're sitting up here. That works. And also works. I'll make sure this is still... Oh, that's awesome. I wasn't sure if that would work very well, but that does. A little difficult to get loose, but it's not like it's stuck to the tank. You know, this is something you can just slot in, and you can assemble like this, and then stick it on the tank and boop, pop it right. Mostly pop it right off. Good strong magnets. Yeah. I tell you, but there's some great stuff in the... I like the AdMech. I like the AdMech. Love the Inquisition much more though. They're my buddies. The Inquisition is my buddies. They're my favoriteest army, even though they're weak and get beat up and all that stuff. I don't mind getting beat up. I am a rare mix of fluffy and overwhelming firepower cheese player. I'm not super cheese. I don't like super cheese. But, I'll play a tough game of in a tournament, bring my bestest and go for the win. I'll do that. That's not a heresy to me to try to go for that tournament win. For sure. Back home, little magnets. But I do love a good fluffy game as well. I tell you, even in a tournament though, I'll not bring something that's overly not fluffy like Eldar allied with Slaaneshi demons. For my chapter is my Space Marines that I first started with are Crimson Axes. They're an actual chapter. If you go like on the Wikipedia and look at all the chapters, they are a successor chapter to the Imperial Fist, but there is no information whatsoever on them whatsoever. So that's why I did them, because I wanted to do Imperial Fist, but I didn't have enough real stuff to get it started. And so I figured I'll paint my guys yellow. We'll do the Crimson Axes, and then whenever in the future I have enough for actual just Imperial Fist stuff, then it'll be easy to switch over because they'll already be yellow. I must admit that was a mistake on my part, because painting yellow when you're first getting back in and learning how to paint and everything is not the color that you want to learn with. That was horrible. I am very good at painting yellow now that time has moved on and I've had to paint a lot of yellow, but yeah. I have quite a few armies though overall. I have a very small Imperial Guard force, mostly what I call a small armored force that I usually use as allies for like Inquisition or my Space Marines or Death Watch. I have my Imperial Axis, which is several tens of thousands of points of Space Marine stuff that I use. And then I have my Death Watch, which is coming up right now, depending on what you paid and put into it, coming up right now somewhere around $5,000 of points of Death Watch. Lots of Death Watch. I have Inquisition. I can probably put, right now with some of the new stuff that I'm building, I could probably get 1,500, almost 1,850 in Inquisition on the table. I have my AdMech full war convocation, and that's 1,850, the usual war convocation that I take. But I have probably about 2,800 worth of AdMech stuff that I can swap in and out depending on what I want to do with it. And then what else do we got? Oh yeah, I have Dark Eldar. I have about $2,000 in Dark Eldar points. That rarely sees the table right now because it's in the bottom of my paint queue because I bought it from a guy, most of it, all as it was. I bought some extra things that I did myself. And those guys, I want to paint them and get them better than they were when I got them before I put them back out on the field. I like to have my stuff painted and ready to go. Like these guys, I could really use them right now for some stuff I want to do with my AdMech, but they're just assembled and not painted. They're right here in the paint queue. And so I won't take them to a battle. I like to have my stuff painted and ready to go. Just for my own personal craziness that I do. So look, that worked too. I gotta hold this and make sure this glues. But so far, and if you guys aren't seeing exactly what I'm doing here, I'm actually pressing on the front of this more than the back, creating a little bit of wider here. Sorry about the kids in the background. But because these magnets are slightly sticking out, even though those are buried in there, it's a little bit wider gap than it should be. Or it needs a little bit wider gap. And so I'm kind of creating that. It's not creating any issues though. It works. Just like I let that glue some more. So there we go. Now the only thing is we have to let that sit. We have to decide on this thing right here. Crazy kids. I should really do this stuff at night, but sometimes that's the best time to do it. Oh. Used to have a stick in here. I could shut the door. There. Door shut. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Their older brothers are out there. How much of the house could they take down? Alright, so this is how this goes. Fits there. And it fits there. How's that gap? That's okay. So what do we want to do? Ooh, space sharks. Oh yeah, you have the space sharks. I want to see the space sharks. I want to see those space sharks, Brab. See the space sharks. Oh, let me see here. This is what you get for just going with things and not planning things. You get difficulties. So that's a gap. That's kind of a gap. Which magnet would work? These again? Take 2 of these and see what that looks like. Alright, if I put magnet there, I have to just like glue it on the top there. Oh, where'd you go? Oh, fell inside. No, it's stuck in there. Kidding me. Oh, the things that I do. There it goes. Fortunately, it wanted to stick to my screwdriver more than it wanted to stick to whatever was down there. Or the magnets that's down there. I know what's down there. So, if I put here, I guess I'm going to actually have to glue this here. Let's see. Let me see if I can press it. Ah! The magnets that are in the back of the thing are interfering. I use pretty strong magnets, so sometimes that can be a bane. Like right now, instead of a boon. Maybe I should just do it like that, huh? Stick that in there. This is backwards. Ah, no. Is that backwards? Is that right? Which is the right way? Wait a minute. Oh, that looks... That's the right way. Okay, let's get it here. Ooh. Guilliman? Yeah, I saw that Guilliman. I'm afraid because Matt Ward is back at GW. So I'm afraid of the rules that are going to be attached to the said Guilliman. This actually looks like it will work. I'm eyeballing down here. I think I'm going to have to take these off actually though. Because I had to create this like slightly off-kilter thing. They're not going to fit in the grooves that they're designed to fit in. So that's unfortunate. And just shave them down. But this is the things I do. I break things and then try to fix them. Ah, the glue. I broke the glue, see? Ah, no. I don't know. I'm wondering what they're going to do with the rules. I was watching another YouTube video, and I kind of agree with what the guy said about this whole thing. I hope they kind of slow down a little bit and kind of take more time with the story, the backstory, and the fluff that's going on with what we got going on now. Because they seem to be rushing it. A lot of the books that have come out lately. Deathwatch was a little rushed. The Imperial Agents was definitely rushed when you look through it. The Gene Stealer Cult seemed a little rushed. The Fall Acadia seemed kind of rushed. We haven't seen the Beltan one, but I'm assuming that will probably feel rushed too when we look at it. Yeah, the helmet one? Yeah, I think they gave the helmet option because they think a lot of people wouldn't like the face. Daddy, what, buddy?
Mommy wants you.
Tell her hold on just a second.
Daddy said hold on just a second.
I'll be right back, guys. Elsie. Oh, forgive me, I'm sorry. I'm back. Just... Alright, block. Okay, fix that. Let me fix this one too. This is different. Doesn't stick up as much. Let me file this down. Want to be able to just all this. The thing I think with magnetization, though, personally, the problem I find with it sometimes is I end up with a whole bunch of little parts that I gotta keep track of. Because all the parts that normally wouldn't be used go in the bit box or whatever. Now they're actually parts that I gotta paint and I gotta carry around with the somehow with the model, so I can use the different options. LT's gardening, which is code for digging holes in the backyard, is what he's doing. Should I look in the instructions and figure out which way that thing goes? Let me see. Oh, instructions. I hardly ever look at you. Storm bolter. Yeah, it goes that way. We got this. It goes that direction like that. That will be better. Alright, so magnets. You do. Oh, need to figure this out. Let's see. If I put it. Gotta come kind of forward-ish. So if I put it right about. Why is there super glue on mine? If I put it right about there, that should work. It should touch where it needs to. Chaplain. You guys put chaplains in your Deathwatch? I do not. I have a couple chaplains for my Deathwatch, but don't see much table time right now. Because I tend to do a more shooty Deathwatch than a close combat Deathwatch. And that's about all the chaplains kind of are helpful for. Unfortunately, in my opinion, in my humbly opinion. I gotta get this right as close to the middle as I can. There we go. Let's test this now. Hopefully it won't try to pull off. Okay, so that's going to go there when we glue it. That'll be good. It'll ride a little bit high. So I guess I just have to live with that, really. The way some of this glue here that might be messing with it. Look at it again. Yeah, just have to live with that being slightly high. Could have used the thinner magnets, but then I think it would have been too far apart. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Oh. So, then I can glue one to each and that'll be great. Close combat. So you're using your Deathwatch as a standalone, or you're using it to bolster another army? You know, the chaplain dude, he looks good. This dude. I actually got him back when he was the chaplain out of the Ecclesiastry with the rhino and all that stuff. I bought that pack. It had him. It had the Razorback thing. And then the little command squad. Something. Reclusium Command Squad. That's it. That's what it was. Yep, that's the thing to do. Reclusium Command Squad. Let's see how these are doing now. Oh, whoa! That wanted to be together. Look at that. That works. Oh, it works. That's nice. And you want to be together too? Yes, you do. And snap, clicks in place. That's great. Weapons work. I just gotta wait for this side to dry. I probably need to take that second magnet off so it doesn't glue to the first magnet, which would be just my luck for something like that to happen. Guess I can glue. Let's turn it upside down. Guess I can glue magnets here. I can do that. Oh, come on. Where'd my glue go? Okay, this should be right here. Sure. Oh, no! Oh, got dragged. That's going to be an issue if it's going to get dragged by that back magnets. These things are so strong, so powerful. Like, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Put this back so I can get it in the right polarity again. Okay. So I want you to be down like this and glued over here and not dragged away. Is that right? Need to do this like that. Let it sit there for a second. It's the best I can do. Hope they don't. Oh, no, backwards. It's okay, but it's magnetized. What, you fool? Look at me. Being foolish. Right there. Okay. Just have to let that sit to the side for now. What do you got? Heart's head. Oh! What else should we mess with while we're waiting for this to go? I'm not going to build that dude, that's for sure. Probably got to figure out where I'm going to put wiring for things. So, need to look at these side panels first. Probably the best place to put wiring. Come here, Boxo stuff. Oh, guys. Panels. It'd be cool to drill that out and put something there, but maybe not. Side doors. Other side doors. That would work right there. Put that together. Yeah, I could start doing that while I'm waiting. If I remember where I put my clips. Looks good. Looks good. Just chopping things. I got a lot of stuff to build that still needs to be in the queue for sure. Got the flyers, the baby birds, and the guard flyer. Got to get that. Got LT's truck orcs. I'm trying to do is get all my stuff built and then organize it in the paint queue by priority in the paint queue, and then get it all painted and try to catch up. And I'll tell you what, the biggest mistake I think you can make in this hobby is getting too much stuff all at once. Even if you get excited, you get a burst of money or something, tax return, or rich relative passes away or something like that. Find a good deal on eBay or something. Get a whole ton of stuff, and then you have this big giant pile of junk, not junk, but stuff that is difficult to see an end to. You're like, oh no, I'll never get it done. It's too much. You get yourself locked into something. Really can be a downer. Make you think, wow, that I don't have time anymore to get all this stuff done. Knock it out. I think that knocks some people out of the hobby every once in a while. They're all like, just take a break from it all. Almost got myself in that with all the stuff, the terrain and stuff that I got. But nope. Gonna power through it. Gonna do it. Looking at this. These two doors actually touch, huh? Okay. That's almost like snap tight. So that's like that. There's a little bit of wiggle room here and some under there for running the wiring to the front of the Rhino / Razor Black. Because where the lights are... Where are you at, lights? So many sprues. This is not any lights. They're on here somewhere. Part of this front panel. Where's the front panel? That's what I need to be looking for. It's somewhere around here. It's where is the front panel? Oh, there's the lights. There they are. So yeah, I would run it to that and I guess drill through those, huh? That's the best thing to do. Objective secured terminators. That sounds interesting. Sounds very interesting. Objective secured terminators. Interesting. I don't know much about the Forge World chapters. All those chapters. Ooh, lots of this stuff here to do. Can Deathwitch get singular terminators roaming around with objective secured? I don't think we can get objective secured because our terminators are elite choices, are they not? They're elite choices, so I don't know if they can do that. You can get them running around causing problems, though. Lots of them. And the best thing about that, though, is that even if he's knocking terminators down, like I was talking to an Eldar player yesterday at the store, and I told him, yeah, I just put like 10, 15 terminators on the board and all that. And he said, well, I'd take my 15 scatter lasers on this unit and shoot it down. I'm like, that's great, but you can only kill one of them because they are each single units. So your 15 scatter lasers might kill one of them, but the other 9 of them are going to come in charge and beat your little jet bikes into scrap metal. So that is the thing. Scrap metal jet bikes. Plus you can do it too if you want to do cheaper. You can do it with the Vanguard vets. I think they would be a cheaper option. A faster option too. Because you can just hop all over the place. Talk about being able to quickly secure objectives. If you're doing an objective game in a tournament or something like that, it requires you to jump and get objectives. As long as you're not facing any OBSEC or anything like that. If there's just an open objective somewhere, you got 3 or 4 loose Vanguard veterans running around that can use their full movement of their jump movement and get places and get you some objectives. Would be nice to do as well. You know, I always glue these doors on when I do this too, so maybe that's something that I can look at for magnetizing too. Cut one off, just look at it. Cutting a door off just to look at it. See how it works. So I'll wait for that one thing to glue up a little bit more. Alright, let's test it here. Let's see if this will come off. No, both of the magnets came off. That's not what we wanted. We just wanted the one magnet to come off. Are you being persnickety, super glue? You are being persnickety. Come on. It wants to stick to me more than it wants to stick to the model, which is weird. I think it's being like drawn to the other magnets over there. There we go. Stick in place. There we go. This super glue sometimes gets... I like it, the Gorilla super glue, because it's easy for me to get. But sometimes it gets to not wanting to be sticky. It's like when I do this, which I've just done. See, caps over here, bottles over here. I leave it open too much. Is when it is most likely to be persnickety about sticking for some reason. Get one magnet off here. Go back home, magnets. Let's see, so we'll try this on this one. See what we can make of this one. If we can get the magnet to stick like that, then this will be fine. This will be a success in my book for magnetizing the weapons on these things, or at least the turret weapons on the Razorback. Being able to get those two choices going. There we go. Set that off to the side like that. Oh, no. Failure. Sometimes I fail too often. Oh, this is not wanting to do what I want it to do. There we go. And balance. There we go. Cool, now I can leave that alone. Where's that door? What about the doors here? So, I've never actually tried to magnetize the door. I don't know if it would work. Actually, I always just glue them shut. I do just glue them shut. I'd like to be able to keep them open though. Any ideas how to keep them open? See, the Tiberius rule states you can take a single close combat Terminator squad as troops, so in a combined arms they get OBSEC. Ooh, that would be cool. That would be cool. Space sharks. Space sharks. That's cool. Sort of like the angry Marines. Wonder how hard it would be to open the door. Probably a little hard. Don't know, like this. What would I do? What would I do? How would I do that? I almost feel like what I would do is I could take a tiny little drill bit and drill through there and drill through there and so find a way to drill through there. But I don't think I can have that angle on it to do that, unfortunately. Magnetized way would have to be just, I mean, there's places here you could drill into and place a magnet, the flat magnets. These right here, they're pretty flat, pretty thin these things are. Wouldn't take much to put that surface, flush mount that on the door and paint it. But what it would stick to, that's the thing. What would it stick to? Nothing. Nothing at all. Could flush mount a magnet up there. That doesn't seem wide enough for a magnet here. It's just sadness. I want to figure out if there's a way to do this. But I don't think there is. Don't think there is. Oh, so sad. Well, at least the weapon thing worked out, right? Because that's working pretty good. Which is originally what I wanted to do anyway with you guys. So that worked out pretty good. And we'll paint these up, and these little magnets will be just good enough the way they are, just to hold on that little top place. And that will be all swappable and pretty. Looks a little rough and raunchy right now, but once all the glue's dry, I'll clean it up with a knife and everything. That works pretty good. I like that. I was afraid I would have to cut these off a little bit though, but that was not the case. So let's see, instructions. Let's start assembling more Rhino. Which one did I cut off, left or right? Right, I cut off the right one, didn't I? Right. There are no numbers on here? There are no numbers on here. Interesting. No, I cut off the left one. It says L on this one. And over this one it says right. You're looking at the... How are you looking at the Rhino? I don't know, I guess... Let me see here. See, it says L. Yeah, I guess I did cut off the left one. Sure be it. Let's start putting it. How far do I put it together before I decide if I want to do wiring and such not, huh? Guess I can at least do these pegs. At least do these. And I don't use plastic glue so much as one, I like to assemble things quickly. And two, in my small little room, it really just is noxious stuff. Sometimes I will use it for certain things, but not for the most part will I do that. Have to worry about that door later. I'll leave you off for later. So that'll work. Where is my... I got this. Where's it at? Oh, what did I do with it? There it is. So if we were going to do some of this stuff right here, Let's look what's in the bag, right? Look what's in the bag. Oh, stream health is yellow. I never know why that is. What I do or don't do that makes it good or bad. I got a tiny little drill bit. That's for the wiring, though. For the, what is this stuff called? Filament here. So that means I can put a light somewhere and then run just a little filament wire through something like the headlights. That might work as well, because I need a place to put the battery, right? And be able to swap the battery. That would be the main body of the Rhino. Somewhere in the base. In this thing right here. Under there. You'd pull that out, you'd see the battery though, so that's the thing. I like to be able to see inside mine. But if I'm going to do a Rhino with that, that might be what I have to do, is put the battery in there. Unfortunately, might be the case. We do that. We got amber blinking. Don't want to use those. There's a little switch and all that stuff. This might have to be another video sometime while I think about this. Might just have to be done where I am right now for now. So, alrighty guys, I think I am going to be peace out and done for now. I just wanted to actually really hopefully show you the weapons. Let's see how that's turning out for me. See if that one's sticking. Yeah, that's stuck. Sticking. Now, good. And this one does. So now it has worked. This part at least has worked. I have to work on the next part of what I want to do with this, the transport. Yeah, and that's right there. That's what it would have prevented it. If this would have been hard glued, like if I had two of these and I hard glued them on there, then that would have interfered. But because it's magnetized, it doesn't interfere, and then I can take it and swap it between the two and swap the weapons between the turret. And that works. So at least that worked. Other than that, I think it turned out pretty good. Hope you guys enjoying your hobby. I'd like to hear more about your armies and stuff like that. I'll try to get better about announcing when I'm going to come on a stream or something like that. Get some kind of schedule. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do for them. But for the most part, I just like to have a little fun. Hobby with you guys. Chat. Hang out. Alrighty. I will see you guys later.